What famous person has done something incredibly heinous, but has often been overlooked? Steven Tyler got custody of his 14-year-old girlfriend so she could go on tour with Aerosmith and be together. Her parents consented. John Travolta refused to give his son his prescribed epilepsy meds because Scientology doesn't believe in mental illnesses, and as a result the son died. Is a neurological disorder like epilepsy even considered a mental illness? Holy shit. Capital L. Ron. Cole Malone, ex-NBA player, impregnated a 13-year-old girl while he was 20 in college. Did not have a relationship with the kid. It's worse. She gave birth at 13, which means in all likelihood she was 12 when he had sex with, raped her. Edit, raped. Boy George. Man handcuffed an escort to a wall and beat them with a metal chain. This is what I was going to come in and add. It goes beyond that. 2. He had the guy chained to the wall and was about to sexually torture him with objects. But the guy managed to break free and escape. This wasn't rough play. It was attempted straight up Gacy shit. He was just incompetent at it and got a slap on the wrist. Marcos Alonso from Chelsea held a 19-year-old while drunk driving and got off with a €61,000 fine. His salary per week is €110,000. Don't drink and drive. Also don't get into a car when you know the driver is drunk. Most people remember Rick James for his catchy funky music, his erratic drug issues, or the hilarious Chappelle's Show Charlie Murphy True Hollywood Stories skit. What people don't bring up as commonly. James and his girlfriend Tanya Hijazi were accused of holding 24-year-old Frances Ali hostage for up to 6 days. Tying her up, forcing her to perform sexual acts, and burning her legs and abdomen with the hot end of a crack coke pipe during a week-long coke binge. He faced life in prison for kidnapping, assault, and torture, but only received a 5-year sentence and ultimately served 2 years total. I feel like that was a pretty heinous series of acts that have been often overlooked over the past 30 years. I've been on a binge watching In Living Color. They actually did a sketch on this. They have quite a few sketches about topical things from the early 90s that would never be on network TV today. I was on a plane once with Will Wheaton and he just sat there with his headphones on watching a movie. He didn't try to entertain all the other passengers with his witty banter and regale us with stories from Star Trek. Nothing. Just sat there in silence and politely stood up when the lady on the window seat needed to go to the bathroom. Steven Seagal is a serial rapist and a fraud. I recommend the Behind the Bastards podcast episode about him. When I was training in Aikido in the 90s, the head of our style was Shihan Fumio Toyoda. He would come to do seminars like twice a year and we all would go out to eat and he would tell us stories. Well, Shihan was the person that Seagal got his first gun from. Shihan told us when he was in Chicago to film his first movie he took Shihan out for dinner. We were told Seagal was so full of himself that Shihan considered him an asshole. It takes a special kind of person to make an ass of yourself in front of your sensei. Literally anything Chris Brown has ever done fits here. Police report regarding Chris Brown and Rihanna. Christopher Brown and Robin F. Rihanna have been involved in a dating relationship for approx 1.5 years. On Sunday, the 8th of February, 2009 at 0025 hours, Brown was driving a vehicle with Robin F. as the front passenger on an unknown street in Los Angeles. Robin F. picked up Brown's cellular telephone and observed a 3-page text message from a woman who Brown had a previous sexual relationship with. A verbal argument ensued and Brown pulled the vehicle over on an unknown street, reached over Robin F. with his right hand, opened the car door and attempted to force her out. Brown was unable to force Robin F. out of the vehicle because she was wearing a seatbelt. When he could not force her to exit, he took his right hand and shoved her head against the passenger window of the vehicle, causing an approximate 1-inch raised circular contusion. Robin F. turned to face Brown and he punched her in the left eye with his right hand. He then drove away in the vehicle and continued to punch her in the face with his right hand while steering the vehicle with his left hand. The air assault caused Robin F's mouth to fill with blood and blood to splatter all over her clothing and the interior of the vehicle. Brown looked at Robin F. and stated, "I am going to beat the shit out of you when we get home. You wait and see." Robin F. picked her cellular telephone and called her personal assistant, Jennifer Rosales at redacted. Rosales did not answer the telephone, but while her voicemail greeting was playing, Robin F. pretended to talk to her and stated, "I'm on my way home. Make sure the cops are there when I get there." This statement was made while the greeting was playing and was not captured as a message. After Robin F. faked the call, Brown and looked at her and stated, "You just did the stupidest thing ever. Now I'm really going to kill you." Brown resumed punching Robin F. and she interlocked her fingers behind her head and brought her elbows forward to protect her face. She then bent over at the waist, placing her elbows and face near her lap in attempt to protect her face and head from the barrage of punches being levied upon her by Brown. Brown continued to punch Robin F. on her left arm and hand, causing her to suffer a contusion on her left triceps that was approximately 2 inches in diameter and numerous contusions on her left hand. Robin F. then attempted to send a text message to her other personal assistant, Melissa Ford. Brown snatched the cellular telephone out of her hand and threw it out of the window onto an unknown street. Brown continued driving and Robin F. observed his cellular phone sitting in his lap. She picked up the cellular telephone with her left hand, and before she could make a call he placed her in a headlock with his right hand and continued to drive the vehicle with his left hand. Brown pulled Robin F. close to him and bit her on her left ear. She was able to feel the vehicle swerving from right to left as Brown sped away. He stopped the vehicle in front of redacted, and Robin F. turned off the car, removed the key from the ignition and sat on it. Brown did not know what she did with the key and began punching her in the face and arms. He then placed her in a headlock, positioning the front of her throat between his bicep and forearm. Brown began applying pressure to Robin F's left and right carotid arteries, causing her to be unable to breathe, and she began to lose consciousness. She reached up with her left hand and began attempting to gauge his eyes in an attempt to free herself. Brown bit her left ring and middle fingers and then released her. While Brown continued to punch her, she turned around and placed her back against the passenger door. She brought her knees to her chest, placed her feet against Brown's body and began pushing him away. Brown continued to punch her on the legs and feet, causing several contusions. Robin F. began screaming for help and Brown exited the vehicle and walked away. A resident in the neighborhood heard Robin F's plea for help and called 911, causing a police response. An investigation was conducted and Robin F. was issued a Domestic Violence Emergency Protective Order, EPO. Chris Benoit is more known for the circumstances of his death. Long story short, he's a wrestler. Received too much chair shots to the head in his career. Developed the brain of a 80-plus-year-old man at barely 40. Had a breakdown and killed his wife, his son and then himself. Once they learned this, WWE tried to basically bury him and act like he never existed, despite the fact that he was an enormous main eventer back then. Everyone is aware of this and it's often debated whether Benoit is a victim or not. But then you have Jimmy Snuka over there who killed his girlfriend in cold blood for seemingly no reasons, and this methodiker is in the Hall of Fame and no one seems to care. Benoit's legacy is so complicated as a lifelong wrestling fan. When I was a kid, Benoit was just so goddamn cool. He was amazing to watch. I think about the regard he would be held in if not for what both happened to him and what he did to his family. But there is more to add to what you said. WWE also unpersoned his son David after the events of 2007. The only people from WWE that stayed in contact with him were Chris Jericho and Chavo Guerrero Jr. Everyone else just stayed quiet. If you have not watched Vice's Dark Side of the Ring, it is the single best wrestling documentary ever created. The whole show is worth the watch. But the two-part on Chris Benoit is particularly important. It is heartbreaking, but it ends with a much-needed ray of absolute love, happiness, and kindness. Matthew Broderick killed 2 people in a reckless driving accident and only paid like £200 to get out of it. And he used the "I don't remember" excuse. How the F question mark? It's because he was a big star at the time. Same with John Landis, who illegally hired kids for a dangerous nighttime shoot where a helicopter crashed, cutting one kid's head off, the actors too, and crushing the other. But he still made Coming to America and other classics soon after. Coco Chanel was a big supporter of the Nazi Party. Coco Chanel was a member, not just a supporter, and went into hiding following the war before emerging later to rebuild her empire. She also fired her entire staff when they demanded worker rights. Remember the Panama Papers? Yeah. They are still doing it. There's no consequence. Why would they stop doing it? Drake was on stage confirming the girl he was kissing and touching was underage. He kept going. And the interview with the main actress of Stranger Things regarding their relationship. Really creepy grooming vibes. He also took a girl out on her 18th who he had been associated with for a long time before becoming an adult. Lots of red flags with that dude. I'd bet money he'll be the next R. Kelly. Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin's guitarist, had a 14-year-old girlfriend and he knew exactly what he was doing. Most rockstars from the 70s lol. The majority of them were basically pedophiles. Ted Nugent wrote songs about having sex with underage girls. One 13-year-old girl wound up with both David Bowie and Jimmy Page. It's insane how much they got away with. One of Kiss's songs, Christine 16, has this line: "I don't usually say things like this to girls your age. But when I saw you coming out of school that day I knew. I've got to have you. I've got to have you," literally sounding like a pervert who spends all day creeping around the high school. People are still playing Chris Brown on mainstream radio like he didn't try to kill Rihanna. He also pushed Karrueche Tran, his girlfriend at the time, down the stairs and she now has a restraining order against him. Just everyone that's with the Church of Scientology, an organization known for their shitty and psychotic practices. From Tom Cruise to John Travolta. They're all ignored because they are A-list actors even though they are involved in a goddamn cult. Where's Shelley? David? Yay. Elizabeth Moss is a major one as well. So many people seem shocked to find out that she's a Scientologist. I'd like to take a moment to point out that all Pee Wee Herman did was masturbate in a porn theater. So, duck your smug righteousness. Sarasota, Florida. Salman Khan, the Indian actor, not the Khan Academy gentleman, killed one person and injured 4 other homeless people sleeping on the streets after his car crashed into them. He has also been accused for poaching black bucks, chinkarari etc. In addition to this, he has also harassed a well-known actress after they broke up. Every time a lower court convicts him, he appeals to a higher court granting him a bail. Duck him. Duck that bastard. Edit, to avoid misunderstanding with the gentleman of the same name. Really hope you're talking about the Bollywood actor and not the Khan Academy guy because I ducking love that guy. P.T. Barnum is usually the first mentioned on this kind of thread. But I don't see him yet. The Greatest Showman was an awesome movie, but it portrayed Barnum in a very positive light. His very first exhibit was a black woman who he bought from an acquaintance of his. Slavery was banned at that time, but he used a loophole to evade that. He ended up holding a live autopsy of the black woman once she died and cut up her body in front of a crowd. He confessed to owning quite a few slaves in his life and whipping them. They worked very long shifts without sufficient breaks. His treatment of animals wasn't very nice either. He had this training method for elephants where he'd shove hot pokers up their trunks. His handlers carried sharp hooks which they used to hurt the elephants. He kept 2 beluga whales in the basement of his museum for a couple days, though this was kept short by them dying. Oh. And the guy with dwarfism in the movie? He was 4 years old when Barnum hired him. Barnum had him drinking wine and smoking for the audience. And he dehumanized his performers a lot. He claimed that people with deformities were part animal or not human at all. Signs would say what is that thing? Etc. He was definitely not Hugh Jackman. The Greatest Showman is the movie P.T. Barnum would have made about P.T. Barnum. Emma Roberts beat the shit out of Evan Peters. Throw away 4 reasons because Emma Roberts is a huge itch. I worked for an ad agency a few years ago that sponsored an internet show which was part of the Comic-Con press junket. Anyways, we had most of the popular shows coming through, with most of their top actors, The Walking Dead, when they were promoting Negan, Game of Thrones, etc. Well, every single actor that came through was super cool. No issues. Except one. We were warned by the show that when Scream Queens comes in, do not talk to Emma Roberts or take pictures. Now this wasn't the publicist or anything that said this. This was the show we were sponsoring because of her shitty reputation. Unfortunately, one of the sponsors didn't get the memo and took a picture of Emma. Emma berated her in front of a room of about 30. Grabbed the sponsor's phone and made her delete the photo. Mind you, Jamie Lee Curtis and John Stamos are in the room, you know. Actual celebrities. TLDR, Emma Roberts is a hunt.